freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 354 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearmsauctions.com, where you set the price on guns, ammo, and accessories. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is the Supreme Court and the Second Amendment. And our guest is Lars Dalseide. Lars is a spokesman for the National Rifles.
Yeah, the National Rifle Association, the Institute for Legislative Action. He's a 12-year veteran of the NRA. Lars has covered almost every aspect of the NRA's political and program side.
Easy for you to say.
Easy for me to say because I wrote it. So welcome back to the show, Lars.
Well, I thank you all for having me back on.
Absolutely. It's been far, far too long. I couldn't believe when I looked at how long ago it was, but there's so many things that we could be talking about to catch up, but our eyes are forward. There is something huge happening on the horizon. We're sitting in the studio on Monday, November 1st, 2021. And so by the time that this episode airs, this momentous thing will have already begun happening. But it is a huge decision that the Supreme Court is taking part in concerning our Second Amendment rights. Take it from there and pick up the ball and run with it and let us know what's going on.
Right. The last time that there was anything in front of the Supreme Court that they put out was in 2010, which was McDonald versus Chicago. Very good case that came out and incorporated the right to keep and bear arms throughout the United States. And so it's been, as I said, 11 years now since there has been anything that the court has decided upon. This itself is the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen. Now, the Bruen part is sort of, it doesn't really matter what that is. It's basically the superintendent of the New York State Police. And at issue is how New York State issues their concealed carry permits. I'm sure most people have the thought and idea that in New York City, it's very difficult to get a concealed carry permit. You know, you need to know somebody, have some money, be a politician, this, that, or the other, some sort of celebrity. And if you're not, then you're not allowed to do it. Whereas the folks throughout the rest of the state, it kind of sort of is a give and take. You sort of wonder if it's going to happen. And that's because New York is a may issue state, which means they leave it up to the discretion of the local officials as to whether or not you're allowed to carry concealed.
So like a parent, huh?
Yeah, like a parent, like a permission-based system. And, you know, I've looked at this little document a few times. You know, it's just our United States Constitution. It's just our Bill of Rights. But I've looked in there and I just don't see any of that in here. I don't see any of that being supported by this. So I would have to think that the Supreme Court, bound by our founding documents, supported by the McDonald v. Chicago, also, how does Heller v. DC intersect this? But I would think it's a slam dunk. They have to rule that this is garbage, what's happening with the superintendent of the New York State Police.
Well, it's one of the things that you do hear some of the right-leaning justices talk about quite a bit, how they haven't taken up another Second Amendment case, as well as how the lower courts haven't really followed the guidance that were set forth in Heller and McDonald. And I know that I just mentioned McDonald, so go back a little bit. DC versus Heller was about this guy, Dick Heller, had his gun there in DC. And at the time, the law was you could have a gun in your home, but it had to be unassembled, unloaded, and locked away. To which the Supreme Court said, well, how are you supposed to be able to exercise your Second Amendment right if it's disassembled, unloaded, and locked away? So boom, with DC versus Heller in 2008, that gave people the right in DC and other federal properties to have a gun in the home for self-protection. 2 years later, that's when McDonald came up and they said, okay, what we decided in Heller, that's not only federal, that's every state. So it's incorporated throughout the states. And now the question is whether that right actually exists outside the home. So what you have to remember or think about with this overall, with what New York is doing, they're saying that you're free to practice your constitutional rights until you walk out the front door. Then we're going to decide if and what you can do. And I know a lot of people will poo-poo that and think, oh, well, we're talking about guns. And of course, that's a whole nother thing. But no, it's much bigger than that. Because what you're allowing the state to do, if this stands, is you're saying the state has the right to decide where and when a law-abiding American citizen can exercise any and all constitutional rights.
This is huge. You're exactly right.
That's really scary because let's say at the time that they wrote that law, that they had the peoples of power were gun-favored people, right? But then when they leave office, now another guy comes in that's anti-gun, and with that May issue, he could just say, no, we're not going to do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's super dangerous. May.
It absolutely is. And how does anybody with straight face think that the phrase keep and bear arms, well, you're just bearing arms as you walk around your kitchen? But if you step out to check your mailbox at the end of the driveway, I mean, what straight-faced person would believe that?
Yeah, there's one justice wrote, it's extremely improbable that the framers wrote the Second Amendment to protect your right to carry a firearm from your bedroom to your kitchen. It's true. I think they had a grander scale in mind at the time overall.
I'm pretty sure
that is the thing. I mean, you have to think about it overall. The states, the makeup of the states have changed dramatically over the decades, over the centuries. Places that were friendly to the Second Amendment are not so friendly anymore. Places that were friendly to business aren't that friendly anymore. I mean, you see it switch and change all the time. So yeah, when you leave a constitutional right up for allowing the state to decide if and when it can be exercised, that's a little dangerous. That there is the possibility that with that, then the state said, oh, well, we could do it with the second. Why can't we do it with the first? You know, the phrase, and I'm going to mess this up, so the paraphrase of what it actually says in New York is that you have to show a significant need above and beyond the general public. So if their test is a significant need above and beyond, how do we apply that for the First Amendment? Are the people out there protesting? Do they actually have a need to protest? Mm-hmm. Do they have a need to protest where they're protesting? Mm-hmm. Maybe not be a need, so that could be denied. You know, you get the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment. There's always something there. It's like if you're allowing the government to decide if and when you actually have that need, then they can very easily say, not at all.
It's a very subjective term, and it shouldn't be up to other people to decide. And when I heard that, you know, in New York, I would have to show that there's a specific threat to my life or something like that. You know, the fact that I have a life and it's just one life, that's enough. That should be enough to say that I get to pick and choose the tools and how and what I choose to keep and to bear in as far as life-saving tools. It's mind-boggling going back to that, you know, if your rights are only within your domicile. You know, it was Lexington and Concord where all this stuff started way back in the day with our founders. And at Lexington and Concord, the King's Army, what did they come for? They were coming for the arms and the gunpowder.
The powder and
Right?
the guns, yeah.
And so absolutely our founders had something much bigger in mind than making sure the hallway from the bedroom to the kitchen was secure, right?
I want to know the logistics of, okay, so I go to a gun shop and I buy a gun.
Mhm.
How do I get it home?
That's a good question, Lars.
Well, there
What do
is
they
the
say
overall
about that?
transportation thing. What most people in New York that don't have a concealed carry permit, the basic breakdown of the regulations are that, you can put the gun in a case and then go to the range. You can put a gun in the case and then go hunting. If you're going to do some sport shooting or something like that, that's perfectly acceptable. And with this case itself, and like I said, it's New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen. And as most people know, for those who don't, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association is the NRA state affiliate. They are the headliners in this case overall, and it's two of their members, Mr. Koch and Nash, who are the main plaintiffs in this overall. And they're just two basic, average, everyday people. One of them makes furniture, and I don't remember what the other gentleman does. But I mean, we've heard the stories before about the people in New York that are applying. There are business owners who say, I was taking the bag to the bank to make a deposit and I got mugged. And the reply was basically, well, that already happened then. You don't have an immediate need. It's, but that doesn't seem
it'll
to
never
be a
happen
continuing
again.
issue. I was like, okay, well, that's the
That's
way of going at it.
that's insanity. And I just can't believe that the people in New York, Danny was making this point off air a few minutes ago. He said on the side of our nation, along that East Coast, where all of our 13 original colonies are, you would think that if infringements like this were to happen, that it certainly wouldn't be starting there, right? You'd think that it would be, California would make more sense because it's way over on the West Coast. Maybe they're disconnected in time and space from our founding documents, and then it might come across this way. But there's so many of these original places where people's family lineage can be traced back to those who fought, bled, starved, and died for the opportunity to even put quill to parchment to write these founding documents. They've lost their minds. Like, what has happened there that we're so disconnected?
Well, that's something for the sociologists and the historians to go through. I guess you see it a number of times with the more urban centers, and there's so many people and there's so many services and so many this and so many others, and there are ideas and promises made that don't get fulfilled, and next thing you know, there's turmoil, and with that, there might be more violence. I mean, usually that is the way that things turn out. In the more urban centers, there is going to be more violent crime. I think that'll be true for just about any state. So it's dealing with that population, and that's just the way that New York decided to deal with it. And since the majority of New York is based in New York City, at least population-wise, or at least a good hunk of it, that's just the way that they decided to go. And it's
so
unfortunate.
Well, hopefully, and this is a hard thing for me to say. I want to say, hopefully the Supreme Court will, understand our constitutional founding and so on and so forth and make the right decision. But then at the same time I say that, it is very unsettling for me that our rights hinge on the decisions of a judge, right? Or a group of justices in this case. But that is not, our founders set up the government the way that it is on purpose, but I'm sure they didn't intend for every big decision to land for the decision of a judge somewhere, whether it's a circuit court judge or, here at the Supreme Court.
Well, I guess you need a tiebreaker some way. We were discussing earlier about being parents, and I don't know how that happens overall if your kid comes to you with an issue and you're the final word. So in a sense, you're the one who's judging and serving in the big court at that point in time. But yeah, they knew that the executive would want to go one direction, that the legislative would have the ideas, and as the states tried to figure out how to work with each other here and there were going to be issues and disputes that person off in Louisiana isn't going to have the same set of mind and issues and values that a person in New Hampshire is going to have, or New York or Connecticut or something like that. You never just know. So that there would have to be somebody overall to decide how things are going to work everywhere. And we see that go through. I mean, there have been a lot of landmark cases that have come through in a variety of issues in the last 100 years or so. And I would say overall, we're better off for it. But it is amazing that I guess we've reached that stage in our country's, well, in our timeline, where everything is so adversarial that a good deal of what happens does end up in court, and that's how we decide one way or another how we're going to proceed.
Well, I think if we would, as citizens, be more involved at our local level and paying attention to even who is on city council and who is the mayor, and are these people truly representing us, and on up the line, I think that fewer things would have to be left to justices. But that's just Cheryl Todd's opinion. So
Well,
I
I'm
don't
not
know that everybody would agree.
I'm not a Supreme Court judge. I've never played one on TV, but
It's
I'll
true,
tell
you
you,
have not.
if I was a judge in a position and I saw the Second Amendment and it says shall not infringe,
Be infringed.
shall not be infringed, then that would mean shall not be infringed. And we definitely see that there is infringement.
Right.
If you can't have a gun and carry it responsibly, then you are being infringed upon.
But that's the way that people try to sell socialism. Well, we already have some socialism, so more shouldn't bother you, right? So we already have some infringements, so more shouldn't bother you. And so anyway, this is going to be a huge case. Now you're saying that 2 days from now, when we're sitting in the studio, but after this is aired, the justices are going to hear the case, consider the case. Like, how does this play out?
It's Wednesday, November 3rd. There's going to be a 65-minute session. Their justices will be there in the chamber. The lawyers directly arguing on both sides will be in the chamber. On the pro-gun side, we have former Bush administration Solicitor General Paul Clement, who was also involved in McDonald and Heller, that will be arguing on the pro-gun side. And I don't know who's arguing on the pro-gun control side. So they're going to spend 65 minutes. And as we've seen lately, it's even more and more entertaining. The lawyers will get up and they'll have a 5 to 10 to 20 minute presentation, and they're lucky to get 2 to 3 minutes in, and the justices just start hitting them with questions, because there are certain facts that they've read the briefs, both what's been filed and the variety of amicus that's going to come in along with it. And they're going to have their points that they want to be, that they're going to need clarification for. And once they go through and do that, they're going to start burning through real quick. After the 65 minutes, thank you very much, off they go. And then basically we'll sit back and wait to hear what they decide till June. I know it seems like a long time, but there are a lot of cases that they're doing. And it's not just the overall presentation that happens there in the Supreme Court. There's also a variety of research that they'll do through legal precedent and other cases. So there's a lot of work that goes into deciding just one case. So
will we hear, there's always the leak to the press, kind of a preview. Do those things happen with Supreme Court, or are they like,
that doesn't happen nearly? I'm actually sort of racking my brain right now to think of when there's a leak decision. And the only sort of inside baseball that you get when it comes to what the Supreme Court is doing and thinking is by listening to the questions that the justices are asking. That's the only real thing. It's not like when they're trying to put a bill up out on the Hill, or the White House is trying to push some legislation through that you hear, oh, well, they're thinking about this and they're thinking about that. And then you get whatever reaction you're going to get from the news reports. The justices, they don't care about public opinion. They care about the law.
So
that's the only thing they rely on.
That was my next question, is if this was, the Senate sitting down together, Congress sitting down together, the call would be for people to call your senator and your congressperson, let them know what you're thinking. There's not that process with the justices, right? Or is there?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's you cannot call your local Supreme Court justice and ask them to rule in your favor. I assume suppose maybe you could actually call the Supreme Court, but I don't think they'd really take that into consideration one way or the other.
Lars, could you just
so
go
yeah,
in there?
this is,
I'm sorry. Could you just go in there and slip them one of these? They don't need to. It only take them a couple minutes to read it, and then they can decide right then and be done with it.
I think they have a variety of those and a number of different patterns, and so I think that we'll be safe on that front.
Okay.
I hope.
But for this overall, it is basically to let people know. I mean, the main reason that we're reaching out and talking about this is, the NRA has been involved with this case since day one.
Mhm.
Some expertise, the financial backing, a variety of different things that we've been working with the people at the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. And what you really have are just these two average, ordinary guys that they're like, it's reasonable for me to be able to carry outside the home for my own self-protection, for me, my friends, my family, whatever it might be. And so, we want to let people know that this is coming up, that this is something important, and that maybe they have an issue, in their neck of the woods, be it something with concealed carry or another Second Amendment related issue, that, we're here for it. That's what we do. We fight legislatively, we fight through the elections, and we try to help people out as they're going through the judicial side as well.
That's awesome. And, sometimes in the Second Amendment world, community, whatever you want to call us, there's a little bit of sibling rivalry. Like this organization wants to say they're more 2A than that organization, so on and so forth. But we are seeing more and more, and I have to believe that this New York Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruen that we're talking about has many organizations that have joined together in amicus briefs. Am I correct about that? So that is everybody saying shoulder to shoulder, we are in this together because it affects all of us.
Yeah, I think it just about every Second Amendment group out there that you can think of has filed an amicus on this one way or another. They might not be pointing to the same points that we are. And, great, if you come up with another little angle, that might be enough to help push it over the goal line, and more power to you. Happy to have it come in there. So yeah, when you get to battles like this, you will have a good deal of people coming together and trying to assist for the overall goal. As you said, there might be some sibling rivalry and squabbling here and there when we're getting stuff done on other fronts, but when it comes to something this big in front of the Supreme Court, it's, shoulder to shoulder, full steam ahead.
That's fantastic. And I am on the board of our Arizona State Rifle and Pistol Association, which is the state arm of the NRA here in Arizona. And, we are, involved in all kinds of things. We're not, just legislative, which is so important, but we're also looking at the next generations coming up. We're about education, training, right? All those things, getting safety, getting the youth out. We have a great junior high power team here in Arizona. And, that is a piece, I think, of the NRA that people just don't think about. They don't realize how much is done by an organization like that, especially when you break it into the different state groups like the State Rifle and Pistol Association.
Yeah, definitely. As you said earlier, reading my bio, I've worked for both sides of the NRA, right now on the political side, but I spent the first 5 or 6 years working for what we refer to as the program side. And that's education and training and competitions and law enforcement in the museum. There's overall 187 programs of the NRA. We have a little more than 100,000 NRA certified instructors teaching more than 1 million people every year how to safely and responsibly use firearms. I don't know what the numbers are right now, but last year we were overseeing approximately 10,000 shooting competitions every year. With that as well, we always have our National Rifle and Pistol Championships. And you mentioned that you've got a junior long range high power team, and they are awful spoiled down there because you've got the Ben Avery range, was just a beautiful thing, and it's a great place for the kids to go out there and learn how to shoot in a safe and responsible manner.
It's so true. And we have such amazing weather. There are like those 3 or 4 months that it's like sitting on the face of the sun and your firearm actually burns your hands.
You mean in the summertime when you have to shoot the gun to cool it down?
Yes. But But yeah, we do get lots of range time out here for people that are interested, including our youth. So going back to the legislative side of what the NRA does, in a big case like this that we're talking about going in front of the Supreme Court, 2010 is the last time. Like, why did it take so long? Like, does anybody know? Do we need one of those little black 8-ball cubes to tell us? Like, is there a reason that it took so long for them to
Well,
take
there were a variety of cases that had the potential to reach the Supreme Court, and actually one that reached it last year, but a little maneuvering by the defendant got it. They basically threw it out, and that's one of the other things. Like, we saw one about 2 or 3 years ago in DC that we thought was going to the Supreme Court because the lower court had ruled against the district when it came to some regulations that they had on gun owners inside of DC. And they decided, we're not going to appeal, because if this goes to the Supreme Court, that could open it up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they backed out.
Right.
The one that came out a year or two ago was up in New York City. It was how that they were specifically dealing with their permits up there. And then all of a sudden, it was a week or two before it was supposed to be heard in front of the Supreme Court, New York City changed the regulations, and they said, oh, it's no longer an issue. Everything that they're complaining about, we've taken care of it. And so the court's like, well, it's no longer an issue. It's not, it's what they refer to, it's moot. So kicked it back out, nothing to hear on. So that's been the main thing. You have seen either the cases just haven't made it there, that some are meant to still be in the pipeline, or that there were strategic moves made by the other side in order to not allow the case to progress onto the Supreme Court.
Well, and I also know that anytime a big case that affects our rights comes before even like a Ninth Circuit or any of these things, it really has to be the right case, because there's precedent set if they hear a case and make a ruling. And so with this one that we're talking about with Bruen, what are some of the best and worst case scenarios? Is there some areas of peril for us?
Well, I would guess the worst case scenario would be a unanimous decision against us that that no, people don't have the right to exercise that constitutional right outside the home, in which I can't see that happening. On the positive side of things, I mean, right now, I believe the count is there are 43 states that are shall issue, meaning that there are 7 that are may issue. What it would mean overall with that potentially would be that any state that is shall issue, if they decide in our favor, that they would then become may issue. You know, that would be a possibility. So no longer would you have to, you know, validate, you know, your need to have a firearm out there. It would just be the fact that I'm a law-abiding gun owner. You see, I've got no criminal history. I have no, you know, mental history. Everything is good to go. And with that, there you go, pay your fee off, and then you get to go on and carry. So, you know, that's one of the positive things that could happen. And, you know, it could be something, I mean, there are tons of possibilities. It could be a reciprocity thing throughout. It could be we don't need any permits whatsoever. As long as you're allowed to own a gun, you can carry. I mean, there's all sorts of things that it could go, but I would assume that it wouldn't be any of the great or grand ones. It would just be an actual good decision that would come up, and that would recognize that people should have that right to carry concealed, and extend that right to New York and the other states that that currently don't have that.
Absolutely. Well, I think we could easily look at states like here in Arizona, we have constitutional carry. So we had constitutional, because basically the entire nation at one point was constitutional carry, because we didn't have all these laws that were, you know, mucking things up. And so Arizona, you didn't have to have a CCW, then you did. And then when the AZCDL, which is another board that I sit on, the Citizens Defense League, they pushed forward for constitutional carry, where we don't have to have a permit. And of course it was, oh my gosh, there's going to be blood in the streets and people, it's going to be like the OK Corral at every street corner. And here we are all these years later to show, no, that isn't how people truly behave. It actually, an armed society does actually turn out to be a more polite society. And so, if the justices can look at areas where there is success with people just being left alone in their lives, just being left to do, to be responsibly armed citizens, I think that there's lots of places that they can look and see that, what New York is doing is actually harming their citizens more than helping them.
Yeah, I think there is some school of thought that the majority of the reason why there's any sort of government regulation for licensing or whatever it might be is based in the idea we're going to raise more tax revenue. But when you're talking about having the constitutional carry in the other states that have had that and the results there, I always like to point to Vermont, which has never had any legislation whatsoever regarding, whether or not you're allowed to carry concealed. Like, it's not on the books that you're not allowed to. It's not on the books that you're permitted to. They just don't have anything on it. And Vermont, you can look at their numbers year in, year out. They're usually in the top 2, maybe 3 when it comes to the violent crime or the guns, crime with guns and stuff like that. And so that points to the overall idea that it's not the fact that there's a lack of regulations on firearms. It's about the different situations that are in the different states. And instead of actually addressing those situations, which is leading to why people are using firearms in this manner, they're just blaming the firearms. And until we get to a point where, politicians, you hear about it all the time, that they don't address or take on certain issues because they need an issue to campaign on.
Exactly.
So until they actually take care of these different things, then we're still going to be just running, into the same old wall.
Absolutely. So something that I foresee is going to happen in the next election, the 2022 election, because we're already hearing rumblings of it, is, of course, through the COVID year, we've had, I don't know what the number is, somewhere between 8 and 10 million or maybe more brand new first-time gun owners. That's an amazing thing. These are people that are realizing that they are their own first responder. But then there are a lot of other things that happened at the same time. There's all these places that are defunding the police. Now police are being let go because of vaccine mandates, which is going to further erode the protections that people have for local law enforcement. And so what happens? Crime spikes, right? Well, some crime, bad guys use this particular tool called a gun. So those that hate our rights are going to try to take those figures, those raw numbers, and go, oh, look, there was all these new guns bought. There's all these crimes committed with guns. Clearly, the problem isn't all this other stuff about defunding the police. No, let's just put that in our pocket, right? The problem is there's too many guns out there. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. I've already seen it. There's already arguments that are out there about it. But the simple truth of the matter is that people saw the unrest, the images that were on their TV sets, and it scared the heck out of a lot of them. And it was the thing of the fact that the police were dealing with those specific issues at that time. And it's like, well, what am I going to do if somebody comes to my door?
Yeah.
What am I going to do if somebody tries to, break in my car as I'm going off to the grocery store, picking up the kids from school? These are issues and problems and concerns. And a lot of people decided maybe it's about time that I am my first stop when it comes to self-protection and preservation. So I think with that, as we're going to see these people hopefully go through, take an NRA certified course, get a little bit of basic gun training, understand what it is that they're doing overall, how to make themselves safer and more responsible in how they're using their firearms. And with that, we will see possibly an overall movement that leads to even less and less gun control in the coming years.
From your lips to God's ears there. And, we've had a gun shop for many years. And at the first of the year, we actually closed the retail portion, but we still sell the guns through our auction house, Pot of Gold Auctions, and AZ Firearms Auctions. It's morphed a little bit. But being in the state of Arizona, where we do have constitutional carry and you don't have to have a permit, we still encourage every single person, whether it's their very first gun or we know that, they're collectors and they've got several. Every single sale, we encourage people, get the training, get the CCW, right? More training can only help. And, tapping people into organizations that are fighting for our rights, like the NRA. And I think that is just part of being a responsibly armed citizen. And I do believe that there is a possibility, as you said, Lars, that we are going to have more people who are, when they hear the television telling them, the politicians telling them that they're the bad guy because they have, they're keeping and bearing arms, they're going to go, wait a minute, no, I'm not. Right. And because somebody did something horrible with a firearm and misused their rights, that now you, Mr. and Mrs. America, have to give up your rights. They're going to go, yeah, I don't think so. Because they're at least more invested than they were before, because people came into our shop that would have never in a million years thought that they would be gun owners. And we're a small little corner mom and pop shop in Avondale, Arizona. And if we saw the numbers of people who were like, okay, I've been thinking all wrong about this gun stuff, then across the nation, there has to be those epiphanies going on.
Oh, definitely. And it is about, reaching that one person, wherever they might be throughout the United States, one person here, one person there. It's a slow process overall, but it's actually a discussion that I have a number of times, in a day, in a week, in a month. Well, maybe not in a day, but in a week, I'll have it one or two times with somebody new, and they're like, "Oh, you work for the NRA?" And it's like, "Yeah." And it's like, "Oh, so I'm like, "No, I'm not like that at all." I got the firearms, I go through and, I try to make sure that I, sit down with an instructor, go to range with an instructor a few times a year, just to make sure that, I'm not developing any bad habits, or most of my shooting is bad habits, because unless you count not hitting the target, but then it's
always interesting when you get to the range after you haven't been there a while, because your target never lies to you. Your target is more honest, even than your dog, right?
It lies so much I quit using a target.
There you go.
Yeah. It's like, luckily we have a simulator upstairs, and I love that thing. I try to go in there a few times a month, and it's like, okay, it's been a long day. And Lord knows I don't have any ammo right now, so I just have to go in here, and it helps out a great deal. And like I said, it can tell you the little things that you're doing, and any amount of training that you can get, any type of guidance, more power to you.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Well, is there anything else that we need to keep our ear to the ground about coming up? Anything important going on with the NRA-ILA before we start wrapping up?
Well, this is definitely the big one overall. I mean, there are different legislators that are legislative bodies that are still in session. I know that we're working with some stuff in New Mexico that's coming up. There's something, some bad overall PR person. It's somewhere up in the Northeast. We have a few things that are in the mix right now as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the big thing right now is the SCOTUS case that's going to be coming up this Wednesday, November 3rd. So that happened on Wednesday, November 3rd.
Yes.
Once this actually airs. If people are trying to follow it, looking for more information on it, encourage you can go to our Twitter page. It's at NRA. Same thing for Instagram and Facebook, or if you're looking for more information on what's happening legislatively, either throughout the US or specifically for your state, you can go to NRA-ILA.org, and that's ILA, NRA-ILA.org.
Fantastic. And the elections. I mean, there's some happening right now in 2021, which again, that'll be done by the time this airs. Virginia was one to really be watching because they're replacing so many legislators, including their governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, all 100 House seats. But in 2022, and the NRA helps us sort of, separate the wheat from the chaff as far as people that are just declaring how they feel about the Second Amendment, or people who have a history. Do you track the history as well of how people have treated the Second Amendment while they're in office?
Yeah, we have, if you go to NRA-PVF, which stands for Political Victory Fund, with any and all election that's coming up, we have the candidates listed there with our overall grades. And the grades are based on what they did, what they said, how they voted during the most recent legislative session. If somebody was a horrible gun control guy back in 2000, but he's still in Congress and he's been backing our bills for the last couple of years, then in 2022, he's going to have a really good grade. And everyone's like, well, wait, he did it. He might have, but it's based on the most recent activity. So you need to go to nrapvf.org. And with that, you can follow your local elections. We do it all the way down to the state legislators as well as the congressional stuff, and let you know where those different candidates stand.
It's so important. Everyone needs to get tapped into that and really pay attention and not sit on the sidelines and say, well, my vote doesn't count. And now the election is all questionable. No, the only vote that doesn't count is the one you don't cast, right?
Yeah.
Lars,
And
I
the
know we're
important
closing.
thing-
I'm sorry.
Go on.
Go ahead.
And so the important thing overall is I was reading something earlier today, and somebody had, they wrote in this article how this, that the NRA, a Republican backing organization, it's like, well, no, we're not a Republican backing organization. The only thing that the NRA cares about overall is your stance on the Second Amendment. If you're a Democrat that has a stronger record on that than a Republican, then we'll back you in that race overall. We don't care what the party line is one way or the other. Now, we have definitely seen an overwhelming majority of those on the Democratic side of the ticket that are pro-gun control.
True.
And so, yes, we definitely have been backing more Republican candidates as of late, but that is not our defining thing. We are not by party. We are merely by ideology and those who promise to protect and defend the Second Amendment.
Fantastic.
Are
Sorry,
we
Liz, go ahead.
seeing some politicians that are changing their opinion on gun control and starting to work with us a little better? You said that you look at the last couple years record. Are we seeing changes?
Well,
I would say right now, not
it's
so
one
much.
of those things that I love working with a variety of different people, and the different people that I work with throughout the US, sometimes the best thing that we can do is to just sit back and let it happen.
Mhm.
Because we have people that if the NRA gets up and says something about a policy regulation piece of legislation that's in this state house or that one, if they get our support, then all of a sudden everybody wants to kill it. If we're defending it, everybody wants to get it. Or if we want to kill it, then everybody wants to pass it. So sometimes the better part of valor for us is to sit back and just let it happen, let the people talk. We have a great grassroots organization out there active in all 50 states. I know that you've worked with some of our people, like yours is based out of Colorado, I believe, that she works there with the grassroots function. And, we have people that are, they're making phone calls, they're knocking on doors, they're sending out postcards, they're going to rallies. They are incredibly involved and incredibly motivated because of the people who vote on the pro-gun side. They are very motivated, they are very well educated, and they get out there and they get things done. Whereas those on the gun control side, a lot of times it's one of the issues that they're interested in, but it's not necessarily the defining side. And for us, for our supporters, the pro-gun thing is a very defining line.
For sure. And, as much as people want to make the Second Amendment sort of a polarizing issue, it really is a unifier, because one thing that everyone can agree on, whatever age, race, whatever political party, we all want to protect what we love. And the Second Amendment protects that right to protect what we love, however we choose, with whatever tool of defense we want.
It is the most basic right, and that's to defend yourself.
Absolutely. All
Defend
right,
yourself,
Lars.
family, life, whatever it might be.
Lars Dalseide, thank you so much for all that you do. And tell folks again, real quick, how they can follow all that the NRA is working on, and we will let you go.
You see our digital guy, Billy, going mad on NRA at Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. He's got a variety of different things that he loves to push out there and share. And they will not only be educational and informative, but sometimes you'll find them quite hilarious as well. But on the political side, you're going to find all of the stuff with the legislation and regulations that are going through, and the Supreme Court case at NRA-ILA.org.
That's fantastic. And I do love Billy. Tell him hello for me when you see him next time. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Lars. He's fun. He's fun on interviews and in person. So, and the Billy we're talking about is Billy McLaughlin of the NRA, and he does such a good job with their social media. I think I said his last name right. Just now it makes me feel like I said it wrong. But anyway, hi, Billy. We love you. These are huge issues. These are important issues. And if we are not tapped in, because somebody out there is sitting there going, oh, the NRA, gripey, gripe, gripe, right? Okay, fine. You can have that time, but that doesn't mean that you can tune out because you're mad or frustrated or have lost confidence or whatever your case may be in whoever it is, whether it's an elected official, whether it's an organization that is, trying to defend our rights, whatever the case may be. There's no room for excuses that, well, I'm mad at XYZ or I don't like XYZ, so I don't have to participate. You're a citizen. And as a citizen, part of your civic duty is participation. So know the issues, use all the tools available to you. NRA-ILA, NRA-PVC, what did he say? Political, you can rewind and find it. These are great tools at your disposal. So get after it, get in there, use the tools, and be ready to vote, because we have got to keep our voice in the arena. Right. What do you say, Mr. Todd?
I'm going to agree with you right there. And, we need to get off the couch.
We do. Absolutely. We do what we can do here to bring subject matter experts to you to help kind of hash out some of these issues and politics and that sort of thing. But it really ends up being your responsibility and my responsibility and Dan's responsibility. The person you see in the mirror every morning, that's the person that's going to really make the difference.
Just like those original 13 colonies, if they would have just nipped it in the bud when it first started happening, then we wouldn't be living in what they're living in right now.
It's so true. And if our founders, they were young men, there was not that many of them. They were going up against the greatest military power on the planet at the time. If you don't think that somewhere in their minds or in their families' minds was, what are you doing? You're crazy. Let somebody else do it. I guarantee you that was going on. But they didn't sit on the sidelines. They stood up, they did what they needed to do. And we have so much work that needs to be done. You think about the numbers, like let's just take California, for instance. Mm-hmm. There are so many gun owners in California. Mm-hmm. There is enough gun owners in California to turn all these laws around, mm-hmm. but they won't, because they're either not true Second Amendment people or they just don't have time. And they let 20 years ago, you could go to the biggest gun show in the country. Mm-hmm. In California.
And you could, so what did they do first? They said, well, we're not going to allow gun shows on state-owned land. So like state fair property, that's
They're
where it was.
trying that here in
And
is it
so,
Tucson,
right,
Arizona?
right. And so you doing things, you think, oh, it's not my, I don't go to gun shows, it's not my battle.
Mhm.
Or I don't use an AR-15, it's not my battle. Well, I don't use a handgun, it's not my battle, I just have a shotgun. It's all of our battles.
Mhm.
And we're going, you just, if you don't defend the Second Amendment 100%, then you're going to lose it.
Right.
Oh.
I believe it's in the Bible. I think it's scripture that says if you can't be trusted with small responsibilities, then you absolutely can't be trusted with big responsibilities. And
And this is a small, smart responsibility that turns into a big one if you don't.
it is. It's a bite, bite, bite. That's like how you eat an elephant. And the other side that hates our rights, they are chomping away at that elephant. And we need to stand up and have our voices heard at the ballot box every single time at every single level. All right.
When Bobby Kennedy was assassinated,
Mhm.
1960, 68, I think. Anyway, when he was assassinated, my dad was very active in fighting for gun rights. And the issue was then cheap handguns. We just want to get the cheap handguns off the street.
Mhm.
And Ted Kennedy and all these people were going, oh, it's just the cheap handguns. We've got to get them all off the street. And it was common sense.
Mhm.
It looked like common sense, right? Well, my dad
Common
dug it up.
sense.
Yeah,
What looks like common
my dad,
sense?
he started digging it up and they started reading the laws that they were trying to pass. This is a gun control act for the country.
Mhm.
And he found out a Colt Python was on that Saturday night firearms list.
Saturday night special firearms
Yeah.
list because it's cheap.
Right. And
No,
so it was,
because they saw
so
an
they tricked you.
opportunity.
They
to
tricked
trick.
it. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't care if I would stand here and argue with anybody that said, hey, we don't need this kind of gun. These people that are fighting for take our guns away, their ultimate goal is to take all our guns away. Every single
So
one of them.
True.
That's
They
the
will
whole
not
thing.
stop. Just like we've seen with, it was only supposed to be 2 weeks,
Right.
right? Just give up your life for 2 weeks. Trust
stay
us.
home.
We're the government.
Yeah.
Trust us. We're the government. If you stay home for 2 weeks, everything will get back to normal. Well, here we are 2 years later.
Yeah,
So-
just get the vaccine. You'll be okay.
They never stop.
Yeah.
And if you want to get the vaccine, fine,
I don't want to.
right? Okay, then don't.
I'm not gonna.
Right? I mean, that is what America was supposed to be about, individual liberties and individual freedoms. And now we have people out there that are trying to say, if you own a gun, you're selfish. If you want, to enact your freedoms in any way, you're selfish. And there are too many people buying into that.
Yeah.
And we have to, draw the line and say, we are going to teach our children better. We're going to help them understand our Constitution wherever it's landed on the desk here somewhere. And
Right here. This is it. See, it's real simple.
it takes like an hour to read. Look at how skinny that is. So we just need to harness our history, harness our rights, and look forward with them, use them for the future, because otherwise, we start this show every week with Ronald Reagan saying that our freedoms are one generation away from extinction. I think, Dan, they are one election away from extinction.
Right.
That's terrifying.
It's already almost, well, it's not too late because we can stop this, but it's already there.
It is time to be engaged for sure. And all eyes on this Supreme Court decision. I so wish this show was going to have aired.
Why is that? That makes me so angry. The judges are there to protect our Constitution. If the Constitution says you have a right to bear arms and there's no infringement, then what is the question? There is no question.
Well,
I mean,
don't be angry yet
I
because
am.
they haven't
well,
decided.
but it shouldn't even have to be decided.
I know.
That's the thing, that it's like, okay, so there are thousands of gun laws on the books right now that infringe on our rights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you should be okay with more. That's the socialist idea, right? All right, we got to get out
I'm
of
getting
here.
out of here. Pray for our nation.
Well, first, let's thank Lars Dalseide.
Oh, yes, of
Thank
course
you
we do.
so much,
Yes.
Lars. We need to have you on more often because there's always something going on, and Lars covers a large portion of the United States to make sure that he's got his finger on the pulse of all the cases going on and the things that we need to be paying attention to. So thank you, Lars. Thank you to all of our amazing listeners and viewers, not just in Arizona, not just in Virginia where Lars lives, but all over the globe.
Right.
We so appreciate you. Your time is your most finite commodity. And when you spend it with us, it matters. Thank you. When you take these conversations around your dining room tables and in your carpools and you have them with your children, that's everything. That is absolutely everything. And that's happening. And we can see it, we can hear it, and we value that. All right. And if you would like to watch any of the videos that we have posted up over all these years, we're actually building our YouTube channel because for many years we were strictly radio. There was no video portion of this show. But now that there is, we really would appreciate your help by subscribing. And then when you subscribe, if you would just go to that little notifications button and with your pinky up, just click it so that you will be notified of all of our future shows when they're posted. So you can find us on YouTube, GunStreamer, and the smartphone app called OpsLens. If you like to listen to the audio only version because you're out on a long Sunday drive,
Or you're voting.
or you're voting, or you're hiking somewhere, out enjoying nature.
You're going to take one of your friends that's never shot before shooting.
Absolutely. You know, usually it's a little bit of a drive to and from the range. So that's just about right for each show. And so go to our website at gunfreedomradio.com, click the on demand tab and binge listen to your heart's content.
Darling.
And if you want to see photos and bios and links to all the works that all of our guests that we've ever had on, even before we were video, go to our guest tab. And there is a huge resource there of subject matter experts. And when you spend time there, we don't hate that, do we, Dan?
Nope.
All right. Until next time, we are going to pray for this nation. We're going to
pray for our leaders, and we're going to pray that you'll get off the couch and go vote.
I like it. But what about those people that are in positions of leadership that we don't particularly like? We're going to pray for them too?
Yes.
Especially for them, I think.
Yes.
All right. Until next time, be good to each other. Have a great week, and God bless.
Bye-bye.